Hi, everyone, and welcome to this session, which throws a spotlight on the future of work for young people in Liberia and Sierra Leone, with a particular focus on information and communications technology. My name is Rehana Merali, and I am the Head of International Programs and Partnerships at YCare International. We are also fortunate to be joined by Sarah Davies, a research consultant at I4D Consulting, and youth researchers Pious, Mannah and Dolo. Together, they will be presenting results from a study we conducted with support from the Institute of Development Studies in the UK and YMCAs in Liberia and Sierra Leone. My colleague, Biz Heather, and I will keep an eye on your questions and comments, so please do post your thoughts in the chat and Q&A boxes. To tell you a little bit more about YCare International, we are a partnership-based organisation established in the UK. We work hand in hand with YMCAs and other local youth organisations worldwide to create work and business opportunities for disadvantaged young women and men. Together, we listen to young people and work with them to respond to the realities they face so that they can achieve their ambitions and dreams. In 2019, we conducted research led by young people in Sierra Leone and Liberia to better understand challenges and opportunities in relation to the future of work. In 2021, we recently updated the research to take into account the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. We will now hear more about the research and its findings from our presenters. The research report will also be made available upon request at the end of the summit. Our contact details will be on a slide at the end, so you can just email us if you'd like a copy of the report. That's all from me. I'll now give the floor to the research team. Thank you.
Thank you, Rehana. Hello, everyone, and it's a pleasure to be joining you today for this session on the future of work for young people in Sierra Leone and Liberia. To introduce myself quickly, my name is Sarah Davies, and I'm a research and an evaluation consultant based in the UK. I'm also joined by Pious, Mannah and Dolo, who are representing YMCA Liberia and YMCA Sierra Leone, and they'll be sharing their reflections on the research findings as well as presenting some of the findings with myself. But before we start off, we'd like you to first introduce yourself in the chat function. So please tell us where you're joining from, what made you join the session today. And then if you see there's also a poll question to answer in terms of what continent you're joining us from today, please let us know. So we'll give a few minutes to answer that first poll question, and then there are just a couple more questions you can answer while we wait, and then we'll begin the presentation. So just a reminder that the poll questions are in the second tab of the chat function. So it's great to see we've got someone from Africa, Europe, South or North America. So almost all over the world. It's great. Thank you for joining us. And Natalie, if you're able to put the next poll question up when you're ready. So the second question was just what motivated you to join our session today? So the second poll question is now there. You can answer what motivated you to join us for today's breakout session on the future of work in Sierra Leone and Liberia. We take a couple of minutes just to quickly answer that question, and then we'll begin the presentation. Okay, that's great. I think maybe we can show the results. So we can see we've got quite a lot of people joining from Europe, as I said, from South and North America, Africa and Asia, so really global audience. And in terms of what has brought people to come to the session, we've got people interested in finding out more about the future of work in Sierra Leone and Liberia, and people who are generally interested in how the future of work will look for young people like myself. So thank you for participating in those questions, and I'll continue. So just a brief overview of what the session will include. It's divided into 4 parts. It will begin with highlights of the research that we did on the future of work, and that will be presented by myself, Pious and Lawrence. And then we'll be hearing insights from Lawrence and Pious regarding their experience from Liberia and Sierra Leone. And to close the session, we'll have some time for some questions and answers. So please feel free to put any questions you would like answered in the chat function. Okay, great. So as mentioned already by Rehana in the introduction, back in 2019, YMCA International commissioned this research project on the future of work for young people in Liberia and Sierra Leone. And it was evident that there were several external trends which would influence the work opportunities available for young people. This includes growing population, the development of ICTs, increased urbanization, globalization, increase in climate change, and there's also the new economic models in terms of the gig economy, the green economy, the circular economy, just to name a few. So with this in mind, YMCA International, alongside YMCA in Liberia and Sierra Leone, decided it would be useful to explore the types of work suitable for the most vulnerable young people in urban Liberia and Sierra Leone. And this included work which could be enhanced by using digital technologies and that could be carried out without ICTs. So the research aimed to provide some recommendations as to how the jobs identified could be more accessible to vulnerable young people. And it aimed at gaining a better understanding of young people's aspirations and the realities they face regarding work opportunities. So the end goal was really trying to figure out how we can contribute to helping young people future-proof their skills and opportunities. So the research was carried out in May between, sorry, if that's fine. It was carried out between May and August 2019, and then we did a recent update this year between April and May, following the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, to see if any impact had been made and if the research findings had been affected. So the location of the research was in Montserrado in Liberia, Monrovia, and Freetown in Sierra Leone. And just to say, this research was really using a youth-led approach throughout the entire cycle. So whilst YCare provided the initial idea for the research, it was through a design workshop that we worked with young people and research teams in both Sierra Leone and Liberia. And the team of youth researchers, of which Lawrence and Pious are kindly representing today, they led the data collection process, they led the data analysis, the validation workshops, which Lawrence will talk about in a few moments, and then the sharing of the research findings, of which this presentation is one of those exercises. So I'll hand over to Lawrence now to talk a bit about the research design workshop in more detail. Thank you, Lawrence.
Thank you, Sarah. Can I have the slide on the design workshop, please?
Yes.
Okay. So as Sarah had mentioned, this research was a whole process, and the process leading to the research was all adhered to. So one of the process that led to the entire research process, even up to where we are currently, was the design phase. So as part of the research process, we had a design workshop that we conducted. That design workshop was conducted in Sierra Leone, where we had the two young researchers from Liberia and the research coordinator joining the research team from Sierra Leone. And that design workshop was basically, it had a mix of all of the researchers. So you talk about the volunteers from even Sierra Leone were part of that design workshop. Now, the reason for the design workshop was basically to just agree on the general objective of the research and also set parameters around interviewees, where we were able to identify the different groups that we'll be talking to. So what we did was just looking at the different stakeholders and the different young people at the community level. Take, for example, the ICT companies, the government of Liberia, and say, who are those in these different stakeholders that we think are important to this research matter? And so we identified them, and that was during the design phase of the workshop. We're also able to identify the data collection too. So we just look at the country perspective and say, take into consideration the different challenges regarding internet, regarding digital access. What are the most flexible data collection tools that we can use? And that's how we're able to come up to the conclusion that we should use both mobile-based data collection tool and as well as paper manual data collection tool. And to be frank, these two tools really help us to kind of have a diverse view of perspectives of different stakeholders with regards to the data collection. We're also able to just have a general preparation for the data collection. And that general preparation entails just looking at the research questionnaires and looking at them and seeing if they will bring up the actual perspectives of the situations of ICT and the future of work in both countries. And we're able to say, this question is relevant, this one is not relevant, and we're able to look at all of the different questions and come up with some useful questions. We're also able to just look at basically the research process and have a practice section, because what we saw was that after the design workshop, there was a need for us to come and recruit additional young people who were enumerators, volunteers to help us in the process of collecting the data. And we couldn't do it as young researchers without having a proper knowledge on how to go about doing it. So we had a practice section just in terms of how the structural questionnaires will go, how the focus group discussions will be held, how the interview should be held. And that process took us for a length of time. And then after we came back to our individual countries, we were able to work with the volunteers to administer the questionnaires and have the research reports ready. So when we went through the research report, gathered the reports, the next phase was just about the validation process. So we wanted to know, even though we've heard from the different stakeholders, we've had interviews at the community levels, we've talked to different batch of stakeholders, but we still wanted to go deeper into the research findings to see if the general findings that were collected from the research, based on the perspectives of the stakeholders, reflected, just the situation, the actual reality of the situations of ICT and the future of work in both Liberia and Sierra Leone. And that was the purpose of the validation workshop. So during the validation workshop, we had presentations of the research findings. And then with these findings, we're able to have group discussions just to validate the research findings. But then what also happened was that workshop had a mix of stakeholders as well. So we look into the disabled community, for example, people, young people who are physically challenged. We also look at single mothers and just vulnerable young people within the community, and also representatives from the government agencies, the representative government agencies, the ICT service providers, universities that were providing ICT knowledge and services to the country. We put them on the table and said, these are the findings that we gather from you. How does these findings look? Do they reflect the actual realities? And so that validation workshop was held. Reports from there was compiled, which needed to support the actual findings of the research and then presented to the research coordinator. So that was the phase of the design workshop and the validation workshop. So they were both part of the entire research process. Thank you so much, Sarah. Let me stop here. I know I also have something else to talk about, my personal experience as we go along, but I'll stop here and turn over to you, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you, Lawrence. So just quickly on the research methodology, we interviewed a total of 204 young people between the age of 15 and 34 years old in Liberia and Sierra Leone. And we used a method called respondent-driven sampling, where several entry points were identified. Lawrence briefly touched on the fact that we interviewed young people with or without disabilities who were in or out of employment, young people living in slum communities, young people with a low income, young single parents, and young people with no or some formal employment. And out of the survey respondents, 90% were between the age of 18 and 35 years old, 55% were young women, and 10% were young people with disabilities. So the methodology included the survey, but also we had four focus group discussions, 2 in each country, and 34 stakeholder interviews with representatives from the private sector, from development organisations, particularly those with a focus on disability and gender, civil society organisations, unions, public sector, and academic institutions. So that's a bit of background information. Let's dive into some of the findings from the research. So we asked our survey respondents to tell us their current working status. And from that, we found that almost half of the survey respondents were currently unemployed and seeking work, which aligned well with existing research, which was telling us that young people were out there was a high unemployment rate amongst young people. And when we dug a little bit deeper into this finding, we discovered that actually out of those young people who considered themselves unemployed, 40% were actually doing informal work to get by and to cover their living costs. So in both countries, petty trading or owning a small business is quite a common activity amongst young people. And the research found that 25% of the survey respondents, less than 25%, were in formal employment, which again just highlights how the informal sector is really dominating youth employment in both countries. When we looked at a more gender and gender differences and in terms of young people with disabilities, what the differences are there, we discovered that more than 50% of young people with disabilities were unemployed in Liberia, and 25% of young people with disabilities were in volunteering jobs out of our survey respondents. And in terms of gender differences, young women were more likely to have no source of income if they were unemployed, whereas the young men were more likely to have some kind of source of income. When we asked in terms of what barriers are that are preventing young people to access fairly paid work, we had a variety of answers which we grouped into 3 categories. So as you can see from this graph, in both countries, the supply side of the job market was quite a significant factor. So that included lack of skills, a lack of adequate education and experience. In Liberia, there was more a significant number of people mentioned the demand side of the job market. So that was more related to a lack of regulations that secure, have a safety net for young people, a lack of finances and a lack of available work. And if we look more into the education challenges, so 16% of the survey respondents in Liberia and 22% in Sierra Leone had never been to school or had dropped out of school. And local stakeholders mentioned that access to education is a critical challenge to address in both countries. In Sierra Leone, it was particularly highlighted that there's a high level of illiteracy amongst young women due to them dropping out of school. And the focused group discussions conducted highlighted that education institutions are lacking adequate resources and support for young people with disabilities. So moving on, we asked our survey respondents and the focus group members how they access ICTs. And as you can see, the majority of the responses, everyone chose the mobile phone. Mobile phone was the most popular option. Also, there was the laptop, but not as many as mobile phones. So when asking what the challenges were in terms of accessing ICTs, we had a range of answers, including a lack of ICT knowledge and skills, a lack of connectivity and high costs, a lack of support for young people with disabilities, as well as time constraints, including care responsibilities, which meant that young people weren't able to access or have the time to access different ICTs. Considering the high level of access to mobile phones, we decided to explore this further. So we asked everyone, do you own a mobile phone? And as you can see, in Liberia, 90% of the survey respondents did own a mobile phone. In Sierra Leone, this was even more. So 97% owned a mobile phone. But then when we looked into this further, 67% owned a smartphone with internet access, whereas 32% had no phone or only access to a basic phone with no internet access. So that kind of highlighted the big difference there is, that 32% was quite a high number of young people without any access to the internet, showing the stark differences of opportunities available. And looking in terms of the connectivity and economic challenges which some young people are facing. So 50% of young people owned 2 SIM cards, and it was quite common for young people to switch between the 2 depending on connectivity and in terms of whether there were any good promotional bundles given by the service providers. In terms of affordability of mobile data, so there were quite a lot of young people who had no source of income. So again, that would limit the amount of mobile data that people could afford. And despite this ownership of phones and the lack of equal access to these opportunities, we did find, and through the discussions in the focus group, it did seem that mobile data and purchasing mobile data was a high priority. So even if there was a lack of money to afford mobile data, it was high on the list of the first thing to get once any money appeared. I'll now hand over to Pious to talk a bit through the work opportunities of ICTs.
Okay, am I clear? Am I online?
Yeah.
Yes. So now we are also looking at ICTs and work opportunities. We first of all try to look at social media connect young people to job market. And part of the research, we realized that a lot of young people can harness the internet. But then when we are trying to get our findings, we realized this was not the case, because a lot of young people prefer to use data, but they would rather prefer to use data to make calls. They would rather prefer to use data to send text messages. And to realize there are a lot of opportunities here that young people can harness, but the findings was a little bit different. And we also look at online job portals also used, especially in Liberia. And in our research work, we also realized that a lot of young people are using job portals. Like, these are areas where young people can go and seek for vacancies, like where published vacancies are made, so that young people can go there and see available vacancies, and then they can apply for jobs. People are also using this, but we realize not so many people are also using it. So it's also an area where young people can also explore and harness the opportunities that are there. And challenges: access to ICTs and or confidence to use ICTs to search for work opportunities. So this was a big challenge, because like a lot of young people as well, I don't know, but they're a little bit scared to explore the internet. They're a little bit scared of gadgets. Like, they have this phobia, if they touch the gadgets too much, maybe it might end up getting problems. So what they only use it for is really to make calls or really to send messages. But there are a lot of opportunities there as well. And now we are going to also look at the statistics. And if you might want to zoom it a little bit big for me, Sarah, it's a little small. I don't know if there's possibility of you zooming it a little.
Pious, that's as large as it goes.
Okay, because now I'm not seeing too much. Okay, but now if you look at the, I think I have some problems, Sarah, I'm not seeing too much. If you might want to read, if you can't zoom it, then you might need to read some of the figures there, because now I'm not seeing.
So basically on the work aspirations, the majority, over a quarter of the respondents in both countries decided that they, in the next 5 years, they would like to own their own business. So that was the key highlight really for us. The key takeaway was that owning an own business was a particular aspiration. And then closely followed was a finance-related job, and that was by 15% in Sierra Leone and 11% in, 15% in Liberia and 11% in Sierra Leone. Thanks, Pious.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Hello?
Pious, we can hear you.
Yes, sir. I'm here in you as well, but now my issue is the slides are really too small for me to see.
Okay.
Okay, so let me use I'm using the one from my computer maybe. Or Sarah, you can continue.
Sarah, you're able to continue?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Thank you.
So in terms of training, so we asked young people what training they would like to have to be able to meet their job aspirations. And as you can see, the majority answered that job-specific skills training would be the most beneficial for them. If we now quickly move on, time is going, so we'll just quickly talk about the ICT enhanced jobs within the gig economy. So we noticed from the survey respondents that they were very aware that ICTs could help with work opportunities. Sorry, I'll just turn on my camera again. We noticed that they were aware that access to larger networks was a big beneficial area to enable jobs, and that access to information that the internet provides can really improve employability skills through online education, learning and training, as well as the on-demand platforms that are available. And so we asked in both countries what jobs in particular, if you had to choose any jobs which could be enhanced by ICTs, what could they be? And so here we have at the bottom of the slide the top 3, and in both countries micro and small enterprises were a key factor in terms of where ICTs in particular could help. In Liberia, also ICT and digital jobs were highlighted, and administration jobs. And in Sierra Leone, we had transport sector jobs and the hair and beauty sector as just some potential areas where ICTs could help. Bearing in mind the current climate crisis and the efforts to tackle climate change globally, we thought about the jobs in the future which could be sustainable, not just for people, but also the planet and the ecosystems. So there's a strong potential in both countries for the creation of inclusive job opportunities for young people in the green economy. However, the research found that young people lacked awareness about the opportunities which exist. And whilst it was acknowledged that some work opportunities were available related to waste management or recycling, interest, and there was also interest in solar power and renewable energies. However, this awareness of what the benefit could be for young people, that was quite low. And in our update this year, and that was quite a surprising, well, it was an area of progress, definitely, was that there has been more work in this area and more progress in the solar industry, which has been growing steadily due to the private sector gaining more interest in this area, and just more generally more awareness about the benefits to the environment and the the effects of climate change and why we need to do something to address that. Also in the update this year, which was touched upon slightly in the original research, an idea where there could be a lot of potential for young people was in urban agriculture. And I think the pandemic in particular, it highlighted how the national food chain systems really need to be strengthened. So that is, again, one area where there's a lot of potential for young people.
Sarah, I'm really sorry to interrupt this fascinating presentation, but just being aware of time, I'm wondering if we could move to the recommendations in the next few minutes and then pass directly to Lawrence, if that's okay by you.
That's it. That's perfect. Okay, perfect. So we did have a slight update about what happened after COVID, but unfortunately we don't have time. So the recommendations coming from the research, mainly we were recommending that efforts are made to really reduce barriers faced by young people to access decent work. And this would include work with the public and private sector to address supply and demand side policies and practice, to ensure that training schemes or internships lead to work placements and career opportunities, which increase the opportunities for vulnerable young people. And then to really work to ensure basic digital ICT literacy for all youth, to increase support and resources for vulnerable young people, and to improve that awareness about the potential of the green economy. So now I'll hand over to Lawrence to present on his experience in Liberia. Thank you, Lawrence. Lawrence, if you can unmute your microphone.
Hi Lawrence, it's just the icon at the bottom underneath the names of all the panelists. So you just need to unclick the microphone icon.
Pious, could you step in and present your section first?
Okay, let me step in. So I'm very happy that finally we are able to present findings today to a lot of young people, because it was something we started like 2 years ago in 2019, and I'm really, really happy to be here again. And so now I'm going to start with the research process, because this was something that was done by us, and it was entirely youth-focused and youth-based. We did all the planning to develop all the tools needed to carry out the research work. And it was really something that was amazing, because now this was a work for young people, and it was entirely done by young people. And now let me just on the research findings. The research findings was something that pushed us to the brim, because now we are like doing a research where we wanted the right information, we wanted to realize the views of young people. And so with research findings, we are able to realize a lot of information. Like one of those information, how a lot of people with disability, or people that people with disability, we realized it's difficult to access governmental buildings. I don't know whether that was deliberate or it wasn't, because these people, some of them are using clutches, some of them are using wheels, and to access governmental buildings is something really, really difficult for them. And we also realized job opportunities for young people are very difficult here. And most of the jobs that young people are doing are not really jobs that they would love to do, but it is just because there are no options. That is why they are into those jobs. And a lot of young people would prefer to do something different. And interestingly as well, we realized a lot of young people would prefer to skip meal. And instead of, they prefer to skip meal to buy data, to buy bundles for their phones. But then we realized we are not using these phones much to harness the greater opportunities that come by with the internet. Instead, they use their mobile phones just to do calls or maybe to do WhatsApp as the case may be. And that was really interesting for me. And also, we realized like people are really now frustrated because they are tired of going to the government to get jobs. A lot of people now will prefer now to say, okay, I want to do my own business. Instead of going to government, instead of now searching for jobs, I just want to do my own business now. So these are some of the great findings that we got. And now we presented these findings to some key stakeholders. This was something that was as well, that made me a little bit jittery because now we wanted to know whether the facts and findings we've collected really represented the voices of young people and whether it was going to be accepted by stakeholders concerned. But interestingly and happy enough, they really accepted the research findings and we are happy, presented like this was really the realities and this is something that young people are facing. And now finally, looking at the impact of the COVID-19 on job opportunities for young people. Doing the research work, we realized young people are really finding it difficult to get jobs. And now with the pandemic, it is like a double for them because a lot of young people have been laid out of jobs, especially those in the service industry. And now imagine these people also have other people behind them. They have like families to feed. And this is really frustrating. I'm imagining how many young people have been laid out of job and this has like some ramifications. Now, it has the potential of increasing gender-based violence. It has the potential of increasing trauma in young people. It has the potential of increasing mental health issues. And it has a lot of problems. But then there are also little opportunities we got about. Now we realize a lot of young people are now using the internet to do social media marketing, which was one of the main reasons of this research, to see how young people can use the internet to foster or increase job opportunities for themselves. So now there was no option. Our last result was to use the internet. So there is a great increase now on how young people use the internet to do social media marketing, to advert their products, which is something great. And we also now see a lot of young people are using the likes of Zoom, Hoppings, to hold their meetings the case before. And so now we see a lot of young people are now getting the awareness of the possibility of the internet, which I think is even going to last beyond the COVID. And small job opportunities open. There are little openings for young people as well, which are not sustainable, but at least it was enough. Now we see young people are selling face masks, young people are selling hand sanitizers to upkeep themselves. These are job opportunities, though they are not sustainable, but they are the little opportunities that come by with COVID-19. I think these are my reflections. If you have any question, you can direct them to us after the session, and we are very happy to answer them.
Pious, thanks. That's brilliant. Thank you so much. And please, everybody, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A. Lawrence, are you able to join us with your reflections now? Just having a few issues getting the sound up with Lawrence.
Is it possible to unmute Lawrence?
Possible, I'm afraid. I've been trying to unmute Lawrence, but not possible. Maybe we could just briefly hear about how COVID-19 has impacted the results and the research, while Lawrence just gets sorted with some tech issues.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll just quickly head back to that section. Give me a second. Yeah, so as mentioned earlier, we did an update earlier this year in April and May to really see whether the COVID-19 pandemic had any impact on the research findings. So both cities of Freetown and Monrovia were the epicenters of the outbreak of COVID-19 in Sierra Leone and Liberia. And to understand how the crisis has impacted young people and their access to sustained decent work, we conducted 8 additional interviews this year, but that was with some of those involved in the initial research. So it included the CEOs of YMCA Liberia and Sierra Leone, the monitoring and evaluation officers, and some of the young researchers. So we found through this update that the pandemic has exacerbated challenges already faced by young people in Sierra Leone. And this is to access decent work, including a lack of decent jobs available for young people, a lack of finances, lack of government regulation to ensure that young people are treated fairly and protected when they are employed. We learned that the pandemic has increased food insecurity, hunger and poverty, and due to the restrictions in travel and a reduction in economic activities, interventions to support young people to advance their skills for work were really put on hold, whilst the focus was really on basic needs and access to food and water. So the overall economic situation meant that there were less job opportunities available for young people. And some young people did take the short-term opportunities, such as selling face masks, hand sanitizers. They were really short-term and not a long-term employment solution. The upside of it has been that young people have been online a lot more. The travel restrictions meant that more people were online. So some people really did make the most, and young entrepreneurs who were already online, having online businesses, they have progressed in that area. There were some young people who were in a physical space and moved their business online during the pandemic. So there has been a very significant rise in the use of Facebook and WhatsApp, social media platforms, which our research originally did highlight was being used, but there has definitely been an increase over the pandemic. Another highlight from the update was that the closure of schools is bound to have had a very detrimental effect on the lives of vulnerable young people. And this will also have a knock-on effect in terms of access to work opportunities and use of ICTs. And then the final update was that increase in awareness of opportunities in the green economy in particular, and the opportunities that could be there for young people to access. But again, highlighting that there is still that difference in terms of the opportunities for vulnerable young people in particular, and how there needs to be similarly to the recommendations I spoke of earlier, there still needs to be that focus on really ensuring that vulnerable young people are thought about through all interventions, and that more support is given in terms of access and affordability and all of those challenges that we've mentioned. I think now if we head to do some questions and answers, and there'll also be a poll question for you to answer. So thank you very much for your time, and I hope you've enjoyed the session.
Thanks so much, Sarah. That was fantastic. I think we have Lawrence back, so he could probably speak for a minute before we go to the Q&A and poll. Fingers crossed. Lawrence, are you with us? Oh, no. Okay. I'll hand over to Biz then for the Q&A, and Natalie will launch the poll.
Thanks very much, Rehana. Great. So we're going to take some audience questions now. Thanks for sending these through. I can see we've got 2 questions here. So let's shoot with the first question. Seeing that ICT is essential in the future of work, how can we equip with the right ICT skills for future employment? Sarah, do you want to shoot on that one?
Can you repeat that one? Sorry.
Yeah, of course, definitely. I'll try and speak slowly. So the question is, seeing that ICT is essential in the future of work, how can we equip with the right ICT skills for future employment? I don't know if you can address that in relation to the research.
Yes, I can try. I mean, concrete answer to that is difficult, but definitely more can be done in terms of that collaboration between any organisations that are working on trying to improve young people's skills. So whether that's NGOs, development organisations, whether it's academic institutions, anyone who is working on that, just even the most basic ICT skills can really improve someone's life and that access to opportunities. And particularly with young people with disabilities, if there can be more focus on trying to improve that support and access to resources, they're more likely to have more opportunities again to really improve their digital literacy and which could open more doors in the future. I don't know if Pious or Lawrence, if you want to speak from if you have any answer to that as well.
Yeah, let me come in. Also, part of our research, we found out that a lot of people are ICT illiterate because now going to school, they never learned ICT, and a course that we only offer 1 semester at the uni, which is like, then you only get to know when you're at the uni, which is very bad. So if also that can be instituted, maybe government and stakeholders like NGOs can push government through to see how they can institute in school curriculum. So like young people start to get the basics about ICT once they are maybe in primary school, in junior secondary school. So before they are up there, they have a lot of knowledge on what ICT means. And also maybe government like partnering with the private sector to see how they can offer ICT courses at affordable cost so that a lot of people can also have access to these ICT trainings. Because now our reality is we have like ICT universities, but then it is very costly. It is really expensive for young people to go to those places. And these places are really offering good ICT skills, but then it is also not coming at a cheaper price. So if government as well can foster or partner with NGOs or development agencies to see how a lot of young people can get access to these ICT trainings at affordable cost, then it will be nice. We have few NGOs like that are doing it, but then it's not enough for young people. I think that is what I have from my side here.
Yeah. Hello? Is it working now? Okay.
I hear you, Lawrence.
Okay, let me just quickly just add up to what Pious just said. I think the same findings from Sierra Leone also reflected the same reality in Liberia, but part of the major challenge has been the issues with access to ICT. I had a personal experience with a friend who graduated from college together, and he never had the slightest idea on how to even use computer. He sat for a job interview and he could not make it to the next stage of the interview because he didn't know how to work on computer. So this young man was into banking and finance, and how can you engage in the banking and finance without even having the slightest ideas? So I think part of my experience with young people and what came up out of the casual discussions with most of the young people is that there has to be a need to address the ICT gap with regards to young people. And that's the only way we can enhance the future of work for young people. And that has to be very inclusive. You talk about the vulnerable young people, even the single mothers, the petty traders, because people have to see ICT as a means of enhancing their own livelihood so that we don't have a situation like the pandemic that just came and then government instituted lockdown measures, people were whom their businesses were stuck, and they didn't even know that they could use ICT or even online forums to market their businesses. So because they didn't have the idea, they sat down and they could not afford to even get food for themselves. And then it becomes a burden even on the government, it becomes a burden even on civil. Done in terms of capacity, that's true. In the context of that, and I'm sure it's the same thing with Sierra Leone.
So much, Lawrence. We're sadly out of time, so we're going to have to close. I wanted to say a big thank you to our presenters, to Sarah, to Pious, to Lawrence, and to our support, Biz and Natalie, for making today possible. And a big thank you to all of you for listening so attentively. We're sorry that we couldn't get to all of the questions. We know that there's been a question around research methodology from you, Alistair, and a few other requests around presentation slides. Please do feel free to email us on the slide that Sarah has just put up there, and we can be in touch with you after the summit on anything that you may want to follow up on. Thank you so much. I'm going to hand over to Natalie to direct you back into the plenary.
Thanks, Rehana. Thank you to everyone, Sarah, Bis, Lawrence, and Pious, for that amazing session. I know we had a bit of tech issues, but I think that's to be expected. And definitely thank you everyone for watching and participating and for all the questions. We do have another plenary which is starting now, so I'm going to direct everyone to the next plenary session, which is I think is being launched now. But there will obviously be more breakout sessions after that, and obviously tomorrow and on Wednesday. And we do have more than 12 hours of on-demand workshops and training sessions for everyone to check out in the expo area. So hopefully we'll see you over on the plenary stage. Thank you, everybody.